transform the problem of Afghanistan into a regional problem and not just an American problem. I think the agenda for us is to see if we can, in some fashion, engage Iran. Graham Allison of Harvard, who is very concerned about nuclear problems and has written about it, has recently had a very interesting column saying there is an opening in dealing with Iran on the nuclear issue. We should exploit it. Well, of course, we are not. And lately, the president, in the face of some very ambiguous alleged plot, has now used words used previously by George Bush. All options are on the table. That was meant to say, I'm willing to use force if necessary. Are we really going to go in that direction now? And then, of course, there's the unresolved issues of the Middle East. So these are the things that we have to address. Unfortunately, we're now in the midst of an irrational political campaign domestically. You spend the last hours analyzing those comics who are running for presidency on the Republican side. And, you know, it's a dilemma. We're a democracy.
Is that what you call it?
And right now we're in a lunatic condition.
I don't know that it, I think it's more than a dilemma. Let's talk, though, about Iran. You say there's an opening for Iran and that the United States is not exploiting that opening. But you remember back in 2008 very well, this president getting chastised from the right and the left, from Republicans and Hillary Clinton, for saying, I will talk to Ahmadinejad and the Iranians without preconditions. And of course, after the president was sworn in, things just got worse. We had the bloody crackdown in 2009. The Iranians have seemingly worked overtime to prove themselves to be bad actors on the international stage. So much so that he's lost, I think the Iranians have lost an opening, and a president that seemed willing to talk despite all the criticisms. What is this new opening that you're talking about, and how does the president convince Americans and allies across the globe that the Iranians are a risk worth taking?
Well, first of all, the Iranians have dropped the ball several times themselves. I'm not blaming us entirely. But there were openings even under George Bush when Hatami was the chief Ayatollah. But we rebuffed that. More recently, there has been some indication that the Iranians might be interested in a deal in which, given the fact that they can enrich up to about 20%, they might be able to stop there and we can stop there, and there might be some benefit in that. I invite you to look at the somewhat technical column on this subject, which appeared a couple of weeks ago in the Washington Post by Graham Allison. I think he's one of those who's been warning about the nuclear weapon and Iran and all of that, so he's not some sort of softy on the subject of Iran. But he points out that this is a real opening because the Iranians themselves may be in some difficulty. Beyond that, there is a fact that the more hostile we are to Iran, the easier it is for the Ayatollahs to rule, because then they combine theocracy with nationalism. Nationalism of the people, even of those who are against him, against the theocratic regime. Our position, our hostility, our occasional threats of military force, in fact, unify the Iranians against that. And we need the Iranians, one, to avoid new breakdowns in Iraq after we're gone, and we need the Iranians as part of this regional umbrella that we ought to be striving to create in Afghanistan as we leave. And there could be some communality of interest. Instead of talking and seriously discussing that, we are focusing our attention on some bizarre plot announced with great fanfare from Washington. A plot which seems to be designed to create simultaneously animus between Iran and Saudi Arabia and between Iran and us. So it's a kind of a strange plot, the details of which are truly mystifying. It looks at best like a sting operation of some sort. Well, that's what we're focusing on, instead of dealing with the more basic geopolitical issue.
Despite Iran's missteps and bad behavior, of course, you talk about them taking part in a regional solution to the Afghanistan problem. A lot of Americans probably don't remember or never heard that the Bush administration in 2001, after 9/11, actually got some actionable intel from the Iranians, who helped us as we prepared to go into Afghanistan behind the scenes. What do you say to neocons that have come out and been very critical of the president's announcement, we believe wise announcement, to get out of Iraq? as quickly as possible after 8 long years there, who say that all this does is strengthen and embolden Iran.
Well, first of all, a footnote to your very good point about Iran. Not only in 2001, but after we went in and cleaned up al-Qaeda, the Iranians actually participated in a regional conference in 2002 designed to establish stability in post-Taliban Afghanistan. And they were the ones who insisted, that was a conference in Bonn, they were the ones who insisted that there be an explicit provision that the next government in Afghanistan be a democratic government. So there was a moment of opportunity then, and I think that ought to be our objective, is to revive that process. On Iraq, your extremely well-informed, geopolitically minded, historically informed colleague said the other day on your program and reminded everyone that the decision to leave Iraq entirely by the date now set was made by George W. Bush. So if the Republicans are complaining about that, they ought to be asked, why didn't they complain when George W. Bush proposed it? The fact of the matter is, look, we can't stay there. If we're going to stay there, we better stay there in force. If we stay there in force, we'll of course have guerrilla warfare against us. If we just leave 3,000 troops behind, what are they supposed to accomplish? Who can they stop? They're going to be endangered. So frankly, I think we have to take our chance that the Iraqis on their own may stabilize, especially if we move at the same time on the other issues that I mentioned, because they would contribute to a gradual cooling down of the tensions and a reduction of the conflicts in the whole region involving Afghanistan, Iran, the Persian Gulf, and the Middle East.
Dr. Zbigniew Brzezinski, thanks, Dad. Appreciate it. That's great to have you on again.
Thank you, Dr. Brzezinski.
It's always good to be with you guys.